Hello. Now I'm going to show you an example of the dashboard. How do you define tests of the services? So how do you implement in this service test layer? So this service test layer is implemented in Spock, which is a framework, a testing framework written in Groovy. So it's an example of you have Groovy code invoke testing Java code. Okay. So let's look at an example. So as you see, this is the code, okay, of the system, and in this test package, you have the test cases, okay, and the test cases for the dashboard service actually are testing the service layer, and they are there, okay. So I'm going to show you an example. So this create dashboard test that is going to test the create dashboard service. Okay, how? Well, if you remember, the create dashboard service is this service here. So we're going to test not, of course, not only this service, but all the classes it invokes. In particular, we are also testing the domain layer and the data access layer because they will invoke there. Okay. So what is the first thing that is relevant to look at? So you need to define a class that finish with the test. Okay, it has a suffix test, and you need to say that is a data GPA test so that he knows that you need to find the database for you to test. And it extends a class which is Spock test, a task defined by us, and actually this has a lot of constants and do a lot of auto wired so that you don't need to repeat this code, okay. And actually you have code to create an external course execution, which we'll see it's handy, and to do logins as a demo student and so on. So you can reuse this code in several contexts. And so what do I have here? So we declare a variable student, and the first thing we do in the setup of the test is to create an external course execution, and then we invoke this method that is in that class, and then we create a student. Look, we create a normal object student, and we save it in the database. So when we start our test, we already have an external course execution and student, okay? What we do next for the first test is create an empty dashboard. So what you need to do, so given a student in a course execution, so basically you add the course execution to the student, so that it's the same to say that the student is enrolled in this external course execution, okay? This external course execution is a variable that is actually inside there and is inherited, okay, and is set when you define create external course execution, okay. So, and now it's the moment where you run the test. So when dashboard service, so dashboard service is also defined there with an auto wired. So you get a reference to a dashboard object, a dashboard service object, and you invoke it with the two IDs, the student ID and the course execution ID. And if everything is okay, we'll find in the dashboard repository one instance, and we now afterwards we can try to check if these instances is actually what we are creating here. And how do? We go to the dashboard. So this is the dashboard repository, as we see is this data access layer, and in this data access layer I get the first one, so it's only one, I can get the right one, and I start reading the information and see, for instance, in this case, that it has an ID, is not null. I can do some check, and I can even see if the course executions it refers to, the course execution is actually this course execution, and the student it refers to is actually this student, okay. And we can also go to see if the student, okay, which is the one we created there, as dashboard size and if it contains the result. So that's a typical test where you test that everything is okay. One test where you test something is not okay is, for instance, in this case, where, for instance, you test an example where you try to create a dashboard, but you give a student ID that does not work. Okay, it's not a valid student ID. So how do you do it? In this case, we use something that are the where clause, where you can repeat, so you can run this for different types of values. So it's pretty handy when you want to test the same test, or the same test, yes, for different parameters, okay, to test two different values. In this case, I want to test with two values, with 0, so when the student ID is 0 and when it is 100, okay? Actually, there's no student ID with 0 and 100, and this will launch, this will throw an exception, and then in the then, I say that it should throw a tutor exception. And I can even receive the exception inside this variable, and then I can check what is the value inside the exception object we receive. And another thing is that to run these, we can verify that since this is going to run to different values, we can verify, so you can distinguish in the log of when the tests run the different cases, okay? And that way you use this student ID variable that is used there, you can use it even in the name of the method, so that you can see it's a parametric method, okay? So you see twice, it executes twice, but with different parameters, with different values or different arguments, okay? And that's it. So that's the way. You can also, for instance, look at the remove dashboard test, and it's pretty similar. In this case, of course, in the setup, you need to create a dashboard, okay? So in the given, you create a dashboard, and then you try to remove it, okay? And when you remove it, basically at the end, so you invoke the service that removes the dashboard, and you see if the dashboard is not in the database anymore, and you see if get dashboards is, so if the student has any dashboard, and so to see that everything is working okay. And we'll find different tests for different combinations. Okay.